2 minutes before the most important meeting of my career, Lucas Varn asked me to step outside. Not HR, not his assistant, him. The glass walls of the conference room were transparent. Everyone inside could see us. Everyone could feel the pause. Lucas adjusted his cufflinks like this was routine, like he wasn't about to make a decision that couldn't be undone. He didn't lower his voice. "Ember," he said, lips curling into a polite smile. "You don't need to be in this meeting. We've got it covered." The words hit harder than I expected. Before I go on, I should say this story is a dramatized narrative. Some details are fictionalized and shaped with the help of AI, created for reflection, education, and emotional clarity. If this kind of story isn't for you, feel free to step away and take care of yourself. But if you're still here, thank you. Let's continue. I had spent months preparing for this meeting. Every risk model refined, every compliance scenario mapped. I was the senior risk and compliance director, the final checkpoint before strategy became action, the one assigned to verify legality, exposure, and downstream consequences. My name was attached to the decision packet for today, not as decoration, but as responsibility, if anything collapsed. It wouldn't be Lucas answering first. It would be me, inside the room. No one spoke, screens stayed lit, coffee cups didn't move. No one questioned why the person accountable for the outcome was being removed from the room where the decision would be made. Lucas turned his back on me and opened the door. As he stepped inside, he added, casually, "For everyone to hear, let's move faster without unnecessary caution." A few smiles, a soft laugh, approval without thought. I didn't correct him. I didn't remind him that caution was the reason the company was still standing. I didn't explain what covered really meant. I nodded once, controlled, and stepped away. Humiliation is quiet when you refuse to give it a voice. I walked down the hallway with my shoulders straight, my expression calm, compressing the anger until it fit neatly behind my ribs. I told myself to wait, to listen, to let the system speak. As soon as I crossed the security threshold, my phone vibrated, automated, neutral, precise. "You remain the responsible officer of record for today's decisions." I stopped walking. Lucas had removed me from the meeting, but the responsibility hadn't moved an inch. Do you remember the moment you realized you were no longer respected? If you've been there, subscribe. Truth always matters, even when it comes late. Being excluded didn't start with that hallway moment. It had been building quietly, piece by piece, long before Lucas decided I was optional. I had stopped 2 acquisitions that would have triggered federal scrutiny, not with drama, but with facts. I rebuilt the company's responsibility framework when no one wanted to touch it, mapping who signed, who answered, and who paid the price when things went wrong. And when deals reached the point where enthusiasm disappeared and liability remained, I was the one who signed, not because I wanted power, but because someone had to stand behind the decision. Lucas Varn was celebrated for speed. Analysts praised his growth vision. The board loved how confidently he spoke about momentum. Caution, in his vocabulary, sounded like weakness. Accountability sounded like delay. Inside the meeting room, I watched through the internal feed, a silent participant by design. Lucas gestured toward a slide and laughed lightly. "She slows things down," he said, as if I were a software bug instead of a person. A few executives smiled. No one corrected him. I didn't respond. I didn't message legal. I didn't interrupt. I let the meeting run exactly as Lucas wanted: fast, optimistic, unburdened by inconvenient detail. My role, apparently, was to stay invisible. Yet the system told a different story. As documents updated in real time, I noticed a familiar absence. One field remained blank, while the rest filled neatly around it. Highlighted but ignored. Final responsible signer. It hovered there, unresolved, like a question no one wanted to answer. I leaned back in my chair, hands folded, breathing steady. They were moving quickly now, faster than caution, faster than responsibility. And for the first time, I understood exactly what they had forgotten. That omission would soon define everything that followed inside the company. The meeting moved forward without me, and it did so with unsettling confidence. Voices were calm, slides advanced smoothly, and decisions were framed as inevitable rather than chosen. From my screen, everything looked efficient, almost elegant, the kind of efficiency that comes from removing friction instead of resolving it. No one mentioned regulatory exposure. No one paused to ask whether the assumptions behind the numbers had been tested outside the room. Legal risk, reputational fallout, downstream accountability, all of it vanished under phrases like growth acceleration and market urgency. Heads nodded in agreement, not because the logic was sound, but because dissent would slow the rhythm Lucas had set. What struck me most was not what they said, but what they didn't ask. No one asked who would answer if the strategy failed. No one asked whose name would sit on the line when optimism met reality. Responsibility had become an abstract concept, detached from any individual face. I stayed silent. Watching through the internal system I helped design. I didn't intervene or flag concerns. That wasn't my role anymore. Apparently, my absence had given them permission to move faster, lighter, unencumbered by the weight of consequence. The meeting flowed because accountability was conveniently missing from the agenda. As the discussion continued, I noticed a subtle pattern. Risks were acknowledged only when they could be reassigned. Exposure was described as manageable, provided someone else handled it later. Each sentence pushed the burden outward, away from the room, toward the person who wasn't there to object. That realization cooled something inside me. This wasn't ignorance, it was design. They weren't forgetting responsibility, they were relocating it, and they were doing so carefully, with polished language and plausible deniability. Then my screen flashed with a private message from legal. "We assume you're aligned with today's direction." I read it twice. The meeting moved on, confident and unchecked. And in that moment, I understood exactly where the risk was going and who they expected to carry it when the room finally went quiet. The chill settled deeper, sharpening my focus and narrowing my patience completely. Most people skim this paragraph, but you don't. Right. Lucas straightened his jacket, glanced around the room, and said it like a command, not a conclusion. We proceed immediately. Chairs shifted, screens dimmed. The confidence was almost theatrical. From my side of the system, I watched the decision hit its first real test. Nothing happened. No activation notice, no workflow launch, just silence where momentum was supposed to be. A few seconds passed. Then a status banner appeared. Small and unforgiving, missing authorized signature. That was the moment something clicked for me. Power, real power, isn't volume or charisma. It's friction. It's the quiet mechanisms that decide whether confidence turns into action or stalls in place. Lucas had the room. He had the applause. What he didn't have was movement. Inside the meeting, confusion crept in. Someone refreshed their screen. Another checked their phone. Lucas frowned, the smile slipping just enough to reveal irritation underneath. He waved a hand and said, "Get someone else to sign." I leaned back in my chair and let that sentence settle. Someone else. As if responsibility were interchangeable. As if authority could be reassigned without consequence. This wasn't retaliation on my part. I hadn't done anything. The system was simply doing exactly what it had been built to do. I want to pause here for a second, because this is where I'd genuinely like to hear from you. Have you ever watched a decision collapse not because it was wrong, but because no one wanted to stand behind it? You can think about that as we continue. The meeting didn't end in triumph. It drifted. People spoke in lower voices. Legal typed, then stopped. Operations waited for confirmation that never arrived. Every path forward required a name, and every name came with risk, sitting there, excluded but still connected. I understood something I hadn't before. Being removed from the room didn't make me powerless. It clarified where the power actually lived, and it wasn't with the person giving orders. It was with the signature no one wanted to claim that day. The silence that followed the error message was louder than any argument. I watched it unfold from my screen, detached and alert. As the room searched for a way around responsibility, the CFO spoke first. "This really isn't in my scope," he said. Palms up, rehearsed. He mentioned timing, market pressure, anything except his name on the line. The COO followed, shifting in his chair. "Operationally, we can support it," he said, carefully avoiding the word sign. Legal said nothing at all. Eyes down, fingers still. The meeting turned into a careful dance. Each executive circled the same conclusion without touching it. Everyone agreed the decision was urgent. No one agreed to own it. I said nothing. I didn't interrupt. I simply watched as authority dissolved into hesitation. Lucas tried again. "We just need a signature," he said, irritation bleeding through control. "Anyone with clearance?" He looked around the table, expecting someone to step forward. No one did. Titles suddenly felt very small. From my seat outside the room, I felt something settle, not anger, not victory, a clean, cold clarity. This wasn't personal. It was structural. They wanted speed without consequence, action without exposure. I noticed the workflow panel refresh, still locked, still waiting. My name remained in the authorization field, untouched, unavoidable. I hadn't been invited back. I hadn't been consulted. Yet everything had quietly returned to me. Then legal finally spoke. Voice low but precise. "For the record," she said, "only Ember Cole is authorized to sign. No emphasis, no drama, just fact." The room went still again. Lucas didn't look toward the camera. No one said my name out loud. I closed my laptop slowly, the satisfaction restrained and deliberate. They weren't afraid of failure, only of fingerprints. And that distinction told me everything I needed to know about the kind of leadership sitting in that room at that moment. Without speeches, threats, or raised voices from anyone, they had pushed me out of the meeting. But when it came time to carry the weight, no one else wanted the pen. Lucas lost control faster than I expected. What began as irritation turned sharp when no one volunteered to sign. His voice hardened. And my name finally surfaced. Not with respect, but accusation. "She's being an obstructionist," he snapped, as if caution were sabotage. I watched the room stiffen. No one defended me. No one needed to. The tension did that work for him. Lucas moved to fix the problem the only way he knew how, by rewriting it. He asked legal to adjust the responsibility file, to clean it up, to make the delay disappear. I saw the cursor hover, then retreat. Every system has a memory. Every change leaves a trace. Audit trails don't care about confidence or titles, and they don't forget outbursts. From my desk, I felt the pressure shift. This was no longer about speed. It was about control slipping through his fingers. He paced, he argued, he pushed. Each attempt made the room quieter. Each edit request raised another red flag in the log. I'll pause here briefly, because this moment matters beyond my story. Have you ever watched someone double down instead of stepping back? Convinced force could replace accountability, if that sounds familiar. You're not alone, and you can share that thought later. The board feed lit up with side messages. Questions. Careful but unmistakable. Why was the responsible officer removed who approved the exclusion? When did the change occur? Lucas tried to answer broadly. But broad answers don't survive scrutiny. Then, one board member finally asked what everyone had been circling. His tone wasn't hostile, just precise. Why was she excluded in the first place? No one spoke. Not Lucas, not legal, not operations. I didn't smile, I didn't speak. I simply watched as resistance replaced certainty, and the room began to understand that pressure doesn't create authority, it reveals who never had it. In that silence, the balance shifted. What followed wasn't chaos, but recalculation. Power withdrew. Confidence cracked. I stayed still, documenting everything, knowing the moment leadership panics, systems begin speaking louder than people, and consequences start choosing their own direction without permission. When the board requested clarification, I didn't rush to defend myself. I didn't accuse Lucas. I didn't explain tone, intent, or humiliation. I did what I had always done best. I provided records. Calm changes the temperature of a room faster than outrage ever could. I opened the secure channel and shared the system logs first. Timestamps, access records, every click, every modification, preserved exactly as entered, no commentary, just data. Then the approval chains followed, clean and chronological, showing where responsibility was assigned, transferred, and deliberately bypassed. Finally, I attached the responsibility matrix I had authored years earlier, the one no one liked to read until something went wrong. There was no argument in the evidence, only sequence. I said nothing as the board reviewed it. Silence wasn't avoidance, it was control. Each document answered questions before they were asked. Lucas's name appeared repeatedly, not as a villain, but as a pattern. Decisions rerouted, oversight skipped, authority concentrated without accountability following behind it. I watched his posture change through the camera feed. He stopped interrupting. His confidence thinned. When someone speaks too much, credibility drains quickly. When someone lets the record speak, it accumulates. No one raised their voice. No one needed to. The evidence created its own gravity. One board member asked about procedure. Another asked about risk exposure. Lucas responded. But now his answers were reactive, boxed in by facts he couldn't reframe. I remained still. I didn't correct him. I didn't emphasize anything. I understood something crucial in that moment. Control isn't about forcing outcomes. It's about narrowing options until the truth becomes the only available move. A message appeared in the board channel. Brief and procedural. The strategic meeting was being postponed. No reschedule date. No explanation offered. Just an acknowledgement that something fundamental required review. That was the twist. Not punishment. Not drama. Suspension. Lucas didn't argue. He couldn't. His authority hadn't been challenged directly. It had been quietly outweighed, and as the call ended, I closed my files. Knowing the pause wasn't temporary, it was the beginning of a different balance, one defined by records instead of rhetoric, and silence instead of force. The new meeting was scheduled quietly, without announcements or confidence. When I joined, no one joked, no one rushed. The room felt measured, cautious, aware of what had already failed. This time, I wasn't asked to wait outside. I was invited, formally, and seated where accountability belonged. My title was read aloud, Senior Risk and Compliance Director, not as decoration, but as function. I didn't look at Lucas. I didn't need to. The board chair opened the session and asked for final alignment. Slides appeared again. Cleaner now, stripped of bravado. Everyone spoke carefully. Every sentence carried weight. Momentum had been replaced by precision. When it was my turn, I didn't present a deck or summarize risk. I asked one question, calm, direct, unembellished. Who here is willing to sign their name? I let the silence stretch. I didn't repeat it. I didn't explain what signing meant. Everyone in that room already knew. Signing meant ownership. It meant being reachable when things went wrong. It meant standing between the company and consequence. Eyes dropped. A pen rolled slightly across the table and stopped. Someone cleared their throat, then decided against speaking. Lucas shifted in his seat, waiting for someone else to move first. No one did, in that pause. I felt the release, not explosive, not loud, controlled, earned. This wasn't revenge, it was clarity. The system had done its work, and now it was asking a simple question it always asks at the end. No one answered. The chair looked around the table once more, then closed his folder. The meeting didn't adjourn with a decision. It ended with understanding. I sat still, hands folded, knowing the most powerful moment in leadership isn't when orders are given. It's when responsibility is offered, and everyone realizes what it truly costs. I didn't speak again. The silence did enough. If you've ever seen authority fail without a single argument, you know this feeling. If not, notice it now. That pause is where leadership reveals itself. Quietly, honestly, without permission. And that realization lingers, teaching more than any speech ever could. Today, the reckoning didn't arrive with shouting. It came quietly, scheduled as a review, framed as routine. I joined the call knowing the outcome had already shifted, not because a decision failed, but because a boundary had been crossed. Lucas was asked to explain his actions, not the strategy, not the projections. He was asked why the responsible officer had been excluded from the decision itself. He spoke about efficiency, about momentum, about trust. Each answer sounded reasonable until it wasn't. The board wasn't looking for confidence anymore. They were looking for judgment. What collapsed wasn't the plan. It was credibility. One member asked how responsibility could be enforced when the person accountable was removed. Another asked who approved that exclusion. Lucas answered. But his words didn't land. They floated, unanchored, unable to carry weight. I said very little. Justice doesn't require commentary when the facts are complete. The record spoke clearly enough. Exclusion wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a choice. And in governance, choices define character more than results ever do. The trust in the room drained away, not dramatically, but permanently. By the time the chair spoke, the decision was procedural. Lucas Varn was relieved of his role, effective immediately. No applause, no argument, just acceptance of consequence. I felt no triumph, only a cold steadiness. This wasn't punishment. It was alignment restored. Authority had returned to where responsibility lived. When the chair turned to me and suggested a transition plan, I declined the promotion, not out of humility, but clarity. Leadership isn't seized in moments like this. It's earned over time, with consent, not vacancy. The call ended without ceremony, as screens went dark. I understood the real cost of exclusion, not embarrassment, not delay, loss of trust, and once that's gone, no title can save you. Cold justice rarely announces itself, but it lingers, teaching quietly, reshaping behavior, reminding leaders that power borrowed without responsibility is temporary, brittle, and always reclaimed by systems that remember what people choose to forget. That lesson settled in the room long after the meeting ended, undeniable, final, irreversible, for everyone present. Returning to my desk felt different this time. Nothing around me had changed. Yet everything had. I stepped back into my role without ceremony. But the weight of it was finally acknowledged. People asked before acting. Documents paused before moving. Authority no longer rushed past responsibility. I didn't seek revenge, and I didn't offer a speech. There was no need. The system had already done what systems do best when designed honestly. It corrected imbalance. It slowed arrogance. It reminded everyone that structure matters more than volume. In the days that followed, meetings became quieter, decisions became deliberate. My name was no longer treated as a formality, but as a signal that something had been examined, tested, and owned. That respect felt earned, not granted. What stayed with me most was the absence of noise. No celebration, no victory lap, just a steady sense of release, like tension leaving a room after the truth has settled. Satisfaction didn't come from watching someone fall. It came from knowing the process held. That understanding stayed with me, calm, unshaken, and quietly permanent inside. Leadership, I realized, isn't about who speaks in the room. It's about who signs when everything can fall apart. What stayed with me wasn't the humiliation or even the outcome. It was the moment I realized I didn't need to fight to be seen. I only needed to remain responsible. There's a strange dignity in that knowing your value isn't proven by winning arguments, but by being trusted when things could fall apart. That understanding doesn't feel loud or dramatic. It feels steady, grounded, human. If you've ever been underestimated, sidelined, or told you were slowing things down, you're not alone. Many of us carry quiet roles that only matter when everything is on the line. And sometimes, the most meaningful justice isn't revenge, it's watching integrity outlast arrogance. I'm curious to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where responsibility mattered more than recognition, or where silence spoke louder than words? Where are you listening from right now if this story resonated with you? Take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective might help someone else who's going through the same thing. If you found value here, a simple like or share goes a long way, and subscribing helps keep these stories alive. Thank you for staying until the end and for being part of this quiet conversation.